This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
Senator Carl Levin was one of the sponsors in the Senate, and Charlie Rangel was the sponsor in the House of Representatives, and it was passed unanimously in both houses. But Carl Levin said something at the ceremony that I want to read to you. And this was done in the rotunda of the Capitol. This majestic place is where we come together to pay tribute to those who have served our country in extraordinary ways. So it is with heartfelt joy and gratitude that we welcome the Tuskegee Airmen and their families today as we bestow upon them the Congress's highest honor, the Congressional Gold Medal. It is the ultimate act of patriotism to love your country, even when that love is not reciprocated. So what a special love of country exists when one must suspend a sense of anger and resist feelings of despair to fight for the right to fight, and perhaps to die in defense of a country, many of whose citizens and institutions are denigrating your very humanity. What is it that these young men saw in our nation which drove them to defend it in the face of the pain inflicted upon them by laws promoting segregation and practices reflecting racism? They must have sensed that despite the bigotry that this was a nation worth fighting for, they must have seen a spark of hope that this was a country worth dying for, and sensed that they had the courage and the patriotism could help that spark become a flame of justice. The first class of 13 cadets began at Tuskegee Institute in July '41. By the time the last class completed its training in June 1946, nearly 1,000 black pilots had graduated alongside thousands of aircraft and engine mechanics, armament specialists, control tower operators, and other positions essential for conducting flying operations. But the spiritual legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen transcends any statistics. They not only fought for us on the battlefield, they fought for the very soul of this nation. Tuskegee Airmen, thank you for not giving up on the promise of America. Our nation has been strengthened by your faith in it. Future generations will be inspired by that faith, by your moral and physical courage, and by the extraordinary gift that you have given to this land. Your place in history is not established by the medal that you will receive today. It was assured when as young men, you put on the uniform of this nation and defended this nation, demonstrating your faith in what this nation could become.
This is impromptu. We didn't expect this, but the continuity of the talking here, that the award was established by Congress in 2006, and it was presented to us by President Bush. And at the ceremony in the rotunda, the last person to speak was President Bush. I just want to read an excerpt of his, when he said, "I have a strong interest in World War II airmen. I was raised by one. He flew with a group of brave young men who endured difficult times in the defense of our country. Yet, for all they sacrificed and all they lost, in a way they were very fortunate, because they never had the burden of having their every mission, their every success, their every failure viewed to the color of their skin. Nobody told them they were a credit to their race. Nobody refused to return their salutes. Nobody expected them to bear the daily humiliations while wearing the uniform of their country. It was different for the men in this room. When America entered World War II, it might have been easy for them to do little for our country. After all, the country didn't do much for them. Even the Nazis asked why African-American men would fight for a country that treated them so unfairly. Yet, the Tuskegee Airmen were eager to join up. It's unbelievable. I don't think he wrote it, but he didn't understand it, but he said it.
So I feel slightly redundant here doing the chair for the Q&A sessions, but if we can have one question at a time, and then we'll do some questions. So open to the floor.
Yeah, well, one of the things that was sort of interesting in the documentary was they were saying that the civil rights groups like the NAACP were initially opposed to the creation of the Tuskegee base because it was segregated. I was wondering how that changed and developed over time, that relationship with the Walter White and the NAACP.
I don't know per se that the NWC protested. Federal Judge Hastings, who was the aide to the president, no, he was the aide to the Secretary of War, okay? He protested. In fact, he almost single-handedly protested and resigned after a while. Right? And it's very important to recognize this because you give me an opportunity to bring out something. And all of you are adults and you're sophisticated and understand things. When you have a vested interest in something, you're going to protect that investment, just like the slave masters did. So Tuskegee Institute had a vested interest in segregating blacks, not discrimination, segregating, all right? And since that was Booker T. Washington's school, the training that happened, and the president and Booker T. was trained in I can't think of the school, in Hampton, yeah. And they came with that sort of go along and work with people, that mentality, and he established the Tuskegee Institute. And then in 1914 at the Cotton Exposition, he indicated, in effect, I don't remember the words, lay down your things and want to let's work, he didn't say this, but let's work with the white man. Implicitly, let's forget how he treated us. Well, that's the Christian attitude it was at the time. But it leads to something else. That was the attitude at that time. Now you saw where they talked about the pilots were given the opportunity under the 15th Air Force. After they had accused them, wanted they could get rid of them because of an incident happened on the Momer. Watch this very carefully, okay? He was prejudiced, and he wrote that they didn't deserve to be in combat, and they should get rid of the fighter group, all right? That was signed by senior officers, including Arnold, who didn't warn us in the first place, and submitted. Then Marshall steps in, but you know not Marshall, how to work the thing. Let's do an examination and see what happened. Davis already knew that the report they made was skewed because they skewed fighter groups of every plane that we were flying in the air. Davis had said, didn't tell them that at the time, but he felt that had they made a report that compared the 99th with the P-40s in North Africa, they would be as good or better.
That's right.
And when it came out in the first sentence, Marshall indicated that there was no significant difference that he pointed between the two. Now that was set up that way, all right. Now comes the Red Tails later on. And the Red Tails period goes from about May 44 to May 45, about that period of time. And he made that statement. And now General, can't think of his name, the 15th Air Force, he calls Davis up, all right, West Pointer now. And Davis went up and they told him what he had in mind. And he indicated to him, we got a job for you. Implicitly, I know you're not going to refuse this. We want you to escort our bombers to the highest fortified areas where the ball bearings and others were made. And we think you can do a good job. Back up. You got, let's say, 1,000 fighter squadrons. You got one black squadron. One black squadron, because it's Tuskegee Institute, all right? And now you're going to send them to the most highly fortified areas. One black squadron, or one black group, excuse me, okay? That's what you're going to do. Well, now let's go 50 years later, what it is, Davis writes his autobiography. Davis is a very sensitive man, and go by the book. He wouldn't move a nanosecond unless he had the facts and things to back him up. And he wrote in his book, when he came to San Francisco with his book and making his tour. And as I read the book, he indicated in there that when he was offered this opportunity, his words, not mine, I jumped at the opportunity. Now you have to go back, he's not necessarily a black man or what it is. You're commander of this prestigious group. Well, whose interest goes first, you, your people, or whatnot? And he jumped, and the death rate doubled or tripled. These are subtleties that don't come out. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's heresy now when I talk, they don't want to talk about it. That's the way life is, okay? Now, when you think of that, and you go back, I don't know how many years, the syphilis experiment, which began in 32. No one has printed this exactly, but some of the ethnic thinking of the people on the commission, or whatever you call it, the board, for the syphilis experiment, how many of you know, that was to give medicine to the white men of World War II who had syphilis, but give none to the black men. Now what did that mean? That means they were not to benefit from this experiment, but to die. Is there any difference between that and going after the bombers? You are not to succeed. You blacks were not to succeed in the experiment of the syphilis or in going to the long range of factories where you're supposed to die. One damn group. Now, nobody wants to talk about this. One other point. When you figure that you had the Western European Christians with the American Christians, okay, fighting over what? Fighting over Jews. One to exterminate them and one to protect the extermination. Not to save them, to protect them. You think about that. And this is the kind of thing that doesn't come out. Nobody wants to talk about it. Well, we can never solve any problem if we don't talk about it. Women know this better than anything else. I'm an advocate for that. The problem today, what it is, until women get the equal treatment in America, but it goes beyond that. Until women get equal treatment, equal opportunity, equal representation, and equal protection of laws, we can never, America, can never be the country it can and ought to be. Because when women rise, the society rise, and all of humanity rise. When men rise, only men rise. They're protectors and warriors, that's all. Thank you.
Do we have a question? Please, Carol.
Oh, it was a question for Alexander. So I heard you interjecting that they failed to talk about you getting shot down and at least we know. But I was wondering, you said, I was wondering about the treatment you experienced in the POW camp.
Mm-hmm.
You said the Germans treated you as well as they treated the other Americans. What was the sort of reaction you got from white American soldiers that you encountered?
When I got to Stalag 3, you're asking a question that take 15, 20 minutes.
No, make it short. Make it short. Well, you told me to say that.
The short version of it,
A few minutes. When I got to Stalag 3, there's some men who've been there for 3 years. They've been there for 3 years. North Africa. When I walked in, quite naturally, they looked at me and said, how in the hell did you get here? But they saw the gold bar and the wings pilot. 4 days later, a B-17 crew came in. They saw me, ran over and said, oh, God damn it, if you damn red tails had been with us, we would have been shot down. It spread out through the whole camp, through the 5,000 men. These Negroes are flying P-51 Mustangs, and they are saving the bomber pilots. Therefore, in their eyes, I rose 50%. Fantastic. That's how we always perceived.
Tell me about the Geneva Convention that allowed for you as an American prisoner.
Geneva Convention signed between the United States, France, and England showed how you treat POWs. You put the officer in a camp, do not make him work. You put the enlisted men in a separate camp, you can make them work. So literally, I set the war up. No beatings, no torture, because they knew more about me than I knew about myself. Here's my graduation picture, where I got my wings. The German, I walked in, he had a big book on the table, and on the front of the book it said 332nd Fighter Group. I looked, this is the interrogation. I looked at the damn thing. He opened it up, and he had the picture and said, "Lieutenant, isn't that you?" What the hell could I say? They had my high school grades. Clark College in Atlanta had all my grades. I went a year at Howard University. They had all my grades. In this camp, there were 5,000 white officers who had been shot down over German-occupied territory. They knew everything about every man in the camp. How? Here we go back. Basic racism. You can go downtown to the tax office and find out how much taxes you pay, and the person next door. You can go to the Board of Education and find out your child's marks and anybody else's. What did they do to the Japanese Americans at Pearl Harbor? Interned them. When we declared war on Germany, what did they do to the German Americans? Right here among us. Not a damn thing. German Americans were going back, sending all this crap back to Germany. Not only on me. See, every time a B-17 went down, you had 4 officers and 6 enlisted men. Pilot, co-pilot, navigator, bombardier. You put the officers in a camp. They had all the information about every American officer. But by the Geneva Convention, no torture, no beatings. Every time I go to a high school somewhere, they say, "Well, Mr. Jefferson, they caught McCain caught hell." I said, "Yeah." Where was he? And what was the mental attitude of the Japanese and the Vietnamese in the Far East? They commit suicide before. So therefore, if they captured you, they treat you like a dog because you're not supposed to surrender. Racism and segregation, basic and fundamental. Why I was treated, why I was not in a concentration camp like the Jews. I saw Dachau after I was liberated, where the goddamn ovens are still warm. Thousands of dead bodies. That's another story. But
as I said earlier, this is a sophisticated group of people, and I'm sure you know something about the OSS, the forerunner of the CIA. I enlisted when they gave the call for blacks who would be trained technically in the Air Corps in April of 1941. That's pre-Pearl Harbor. And I want to bring out some supports him. How did they get all this information on him? And I also indicated that some evidence has shown the ethnic background of some of the people who did the syphilis experience and things against Tuskegee Airmen and what I'm about to talk about now. No, actually, nobody's going to put that out. Okay? So that information, if it is out, and I'm sure it's out and they know, but it's not going to be disseminated. And it's probably highly classified and all that type of stuff, all right? Now you figure before Pearl Harbor, in April of 1941, and before Pearl Harbor, the government has solicited members of the 99th Pursuit Squadron. I'm one of the 401 members of the Pursuit Squadron. That's the senior group. Nobody has more seniority than that. And sent out, you have been selected to do some information for the government. So you know if you're a patriot, this thing goes up.
oh yeah, patriot.
And the idea was that they felt that among the, now, but watch it, we're segregated. But among the military, there are people who are giving information to the Nazis. So these segregated blacks are given it, implicitly, they could be among you blacks who we segregated, etc. And the object was, I got this letter and I couldn't believe it. Why did you do me? And then you're supposed to keep it quiet and not say anything. And what you're supposed to do, somebody would come from, they call it like the communist, a cell, and they'll tell you when are we going to meet. And when you meet, you divulge what you heard other people say because there could be some infiltration there, etc. And I said, you son of a bitches. Like words to that effect. And I said, I will let me be sidetracked a minute. I went to one of the better high schools in New York, Stuyvesant High School. And the point I'm bringing out there, that you learn to think, and that's where I really felt I was an American. And this was not American. Courage is something I don't know how you get it. Most people who do things are not courage. They're just conditioned to respond automatically to do something, they do it, and you're a big hero. We make something out of you, somebody better, so you don't get anything. Thank you very much. All right. So during this period of time, I figured out, and I was afraid to talk to anybody because there are people who will let people know what you think, etc., and that could work against you. I don't know where I got all that moxie from, but anyhow, that's New York, living among the Jews, the Italians, the Irish, etc. So when we would meet, and I'd get a time we would meet, and I remember the monkeys, the three monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. And I wrote, I saw nothing, heard nothing, and knew nothing. And that continued for less than a year, and it just evaporated. I guess they figured we're not getting anything from him. But the idea to think, the mentality, that among segregated blacks, etc., you got informants from the Nazis.
You have a treatment.
Yeah. Oh, whoa, the gentleman you saw in the blue, if you remember him, he spoke about I'll give you the one he mentioned where he said that the guy, nigga, if you say one more, I shoot him. His name is Lear. We haven't been in, I went to pilot training in Washington. We haven't to been in the same pilot training.
Oh, yeah.
He's the only one who gave some information, gave you insight to what this thing was about. No, all due respect, depending on what it was. He gave you the feelings. That's very important. And he came to one of our convention meetings, Tuskegee Airmen, that we have every year around the country. And I don't remember where it was. And before the meeting opened up, he said he had something to say. And then McGee, I think, was the chair, the president, and they set aside he. And he was just about the way he was there. It was something he didn't want to say, but he said he had this burden on him. Well, you probably may not know, but there are many or several people who were Tuskegee Airmen in World War II and combat pilots got in positions of recognition. And this one guy was highly recognized in the federal government. And he got sick and whatnot and he died. But before he died, Lear was at his bedside and he told Lear something. And what he told Lear, and Lear said, he was bothered him all his life, so to speak. It didn't bother me, but it bothered life. That he was one of those who was selected to inform. And he was a combat pilot. And Lear said he didn't want to carry it by himself. He wanted to relieve himself of that, and I can understand that. So he got up and talked, and nobody knew what he talked about. You're not supposed to talk about this.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to talk about that. You're a gardener, but you're not going to make any money telling I said so. That won't work. And this is the kind of thing that goes on. And it makes some people think that they have to do these things because they're not. Remember, everybody here and everywhere, from my perspective, by whatever degree, you're a victim or beneficiary of your environment. And your characters come up before you 4, 5, or 6, or whatever it is. And it doesn't change unless some trauma occurs. You don't know reasoning out. Some trauma occurs. An example, not picking anybody, but it's a good example. You reject a woman, don't ever think she gets over it. And don't try a second time.
I would like to just do some final words and thank these gentlemen for coming and talking about their experiences. I think that they've really given us a really rich understanding of both what it was like fighting during the Second World War, both at home and in Europe, and perhaps if we can do the best way that we can to show our appreciation to give them
I don't want to always statement you said, but I would like to add to that, and how our governments dehumanize us. You know, in America, I don't say it doesn't exist here. This is my main mantra, okay? For 400 uninterrupted years in the United States of America, 1607, women, natives, and blacks have been dehumanized as human beings. This is 2012. You don't hear one presidential candidate talking about it. You don't hear the women talking about it. You don't hear anybody talking, and every guy goes along like everything is all right. And until these women, they've been brainwashed, until they get together and recognize, damn the men, you got to look out for yourself first.
Very true.
And vote every damn one of them out of office. Every one, good or bad, it doesn't matter. The good ones will come back and want to work with you. And if you get rid of them, then we may begin to understand. And I give the men had 400 uninterrupted years to dehumanize women, natives, and blacks. I give the women 100 years to get it right, to get going. And now they want the current president of the United States, the 44th president, to undo how they effed up America. They want to give him 40 years to show that.
They want to do it.
Thank you. You made my day.